Threatening to not attend my sister's wedding? I, a 29F, have a sister called Ella, 27F. Growing up, I was put in the position of being a parent to Ella despite how close we are in age. Our dad died while we were young, which to be honest wasn't much of an impact because he wasn't a present or involved dad, and I don't think he really wanted us. Then when Ella was 6 and I was 8, she was diagnosed with diabetes and ended up in the hospital after falling extremely sick, which is how they diagnosed her. Mom fell apart and basically checked out after the diagnosis. She went to the hospital every day and was there, but she never took anything in, made no effort to make sure she was able to help Ella deal with her diagnosis, wasn't there for me. Once Ella came home, I had to take over and make sure we had something to eat, and I had to push Mom to bring money into the house some way because she lost her job after Ella's diagnosis when she basically ghosted her boss and refused to speak to them. It was a tough life and Ella really clung to me. Lines were blurred because I wanted to be her sister, but she needed and wanted a parent, and after a while I was more of a mom in her eyes than a sister. Our relationship never returned to one of sisters. For Ella, she couldn't see me as anything other than her parent. Ella is now engaged to Jackson, 30M. Jackson is my ex. We were together from the ages of 19 to 23. Jackson cheated on me and stole from me. He slept with a girl who was shitty to me at work and tried to excuse it as they got drunk, though I found out it happened at least 5 times. He also bought her stuff with my money. Literally took it from my house to buy this chick stuff. I was furious. I even called the police on him when I learned what he had done. Ella started dating him 18 months ago. I wasn't happy when she told me. No part of me thought it was a good idea. She told me she knew he was an awful jerk when I knew him, but he had changed and blah blah blah. I told her it was her life, but she had to understand if they ended up being a serious thing, it wouldn't mean I would be close to him. She told me that my husband and husband was Jackson's best friend when I was dating him, and it's how we met, should at least be civil and give things a chance. The problem now is she told me to buy Jackson a gift as a symbol of me accepting him into our little family. She has been at this for 3 months now and won't let up. She accused me initially of being bitter because I wouldn't. But then she called me selfish last week when I said I wouldn't buy him shit. She told me I have always been selfish, and it set me off because after everything I did for her, she called me selfish and I threatened to skip her wedding. She got so upset and ran to extended family who did nothing for us when we were kids, who all told me I was awful for making that threat. Ella even said I was cruel to even consider not showing.
Comment 1. NTA: you never have to attend if you don't want to, but consider that this might mean you never have a relationship with her again. Also consider you were parentified, and that is not the fault of either of the two of you. Make sure that you aren't directing toward her years of resentment over things that are not her fault, either. Also, if you're not already doing it, please go to therapy because you have decades of trauma to process. Comment 2. NTA: what has Jackson done to prove to you that he has changed? You were the wronged party. The onus is on him to prove that he has changed, not on you to believe that he is different now. Your sister chose to marry him despite the harm he did to you, and she needs to accept that there will be fallout because of this, and, again, the onus is not on you to accept this. It's on her to understand how this makes your life awkward. And her trying to force you to accept him is not helping matters. She can accuse you of being bitter all she wants. The point she is missing is that you have every right to be bitter. Especially without some positive actions by Jackson to make up for the harm he did to you. Again, Jackson needs to be making things up to you, you do not need to be accepting him. Comment 3. NTA: and while you were parentified and Ella is also a victim of that, she is now an adult and you are allowed to set boundaries to protect yourself. I hope you are in therapy to process everything. There is no reason for you to be accommodating towards Jackson, let alone buy him a gift. He should buy you something to pay back the money he stole if he is a changed man. Complaining to my brother-in-law for making my daughter a picky eater. So my daughter is 9 and has been generally good with food. She usually eats everything. A few weeks ago my wife was traveling for work and I had a family emergency back in my home country, so suddenly we needed someone to look after our daughter Chloe for about a week, and my wife's brother Owen, 30M, volunteered and saved the day. Owen is a foodie and to be fair makes delicious food, but he's also quite picky and maybe a bit judgmental of food that isn't done properly or isn't fancy enough. This isn't usually an issue though. Looks like during this time Chloe and Owen had the time of their lives because my daughter was quite happy in the end, and well, we learned about the surprises later on. Apparently Owen fed her some really fancy food and kind of changed her perspective about a lot of the food we typically eat. I learned this the hard way, when Chloe asked for a grilled cheese and then didn't eat what I made her, typical American style which she always liked, wanted it the way her uncle Owen made it. I called Owen for the recipe but goodness me, I had to buy like 10 new ingredients, several types of cheese, a kind of bread that I don't have or can't make fresh bechamel sauce or whatever it's called, etc. Like I don't have time to do any of these and they are expensive. I did give this a try and my daughter did say it was nice but not as good as Uncle Owen's. This keeps on happening now. Pretty much everything me or my wife make, or when we order pizza, she says this is not good and wants it the way Owen does it. We then call Owen for the recipe and everything is complex, expensive, needs equipment we don't have and time consuming. Owen hosted Christmas dinner and Chloe asked to go there early to help her uncle and well, the day after that said that is how we should make food. In my kind of frustration I called Owen and told him he kind of made our lives a lot more difficult. We never had trouble with food before and now it's the #1 issue. He suggested that maybe we can expand our horizons and it's good for Chloe too to experience a wider range of food choices instead of complaining to her person who gives good food to Chloe. My wife agrees that it's a lot more difficult now but says it was kind of an asshole thing to complain to Owen when he was doing us a favor and he hasn't done anything except give Chloe good and healthy food. From my perspective it was just not necessary for a 9-year-old to turn into Gordon Ramsay and make our lives a lot more complicated. Comment 1. YTA, but for the way you handled it. You can't afford all the ingredients for Owen's style cooking. Absolutely fine. And completely understandable. But Owen didn't do anything other than let his niece explore other foods, or same foods made differently. This should have been a conversation between you and your daughter about how fancy food is not always going to be on the menu, and appreciating what is made for her regardless of who made it or how it was made is good manners. It does just sound like a phase she will soon outgrow, so don't worry too much, but Owen wasn't wrong here. Comment 2. I get that you're frustrated, but Owen did you a huge favor in a tight spot and she was well taken care of. She learned to expand her palate, great. But you're blaming him when you're not taking charge in your own home. Ever thought of telling your daughter no when she wants things her own/Owen's way in your house? I personally wouldn't be running out spending huge money on specialty cheeses to placate a child. I'd explain that eating at home is different than at Owen's and prepare her good, nutritious food without the fuss. She's 9. It's great that she had fun with a foodie relative, but I wouldn't twist myself into knots to serve her gourmet grilled cheese. It's a want, not a need, and you need to teach her the difference between the two. YTA. Comment 3. YTA, this may have ignited a passion in your daughter that she will enjoy for life. Perhaps use it as an opportunity to create bonding time with her doing the cooking. Texting my wife, your sister is welcome to stay. My sister-in-law, 33F, was visiting us from out of town and staying with us, 35M, 35F, for a week between Christmas and New Year. We were supposed to go out last night, but I got into a silly fight with my wife, so I stormed off and went home by myself. I won't get into the details of this argument, because I accept the bulk of the culpability for it, and it's not the point of this ITA question. It is probably worth noting for context that there has been simmering tension between me and my wife lately, to the point she brought up if it would make sense for us to take time apart. When I arrived home, I concluded it would be best for me to leave the apartment for the rest of Syl's stay, which had another 48 hours remaining as her flight could not be changed. We're in a 1BR NYC apartment, with sister-in-law staying in our living room, so it's impossible not to be in each other's face all the time. I believed sister-in-law would feel uncomfortable due to the tension, and my continued presence would effectively force her out of our place, which I considered would be unfair to her. Besides, sister-in-law is currently a grad student living off a student loan with a ridiculously high interest rate, and she would be paying exorbitant hotel rates in NYC during New Year's Eve weekend, whereas I have enough credit card points to make the out-of-pocket expenses a minimal consideration. Therefore, I texted my wife as follows. I'm leaving the house at 9 p.m. and plan to return on Jan 1. Let's talk in person then. Your sister is welcome to stay until then. At 8:45 p.m., I had finished packing my overnight bag when, to my surprise, my wife and sister-in-law arrived at the apartment. Sister-in-law accused me of being extremely rude, taking particular umbrage with the last sentence of my text. Well, I said that out of consideration for you. I admit I am at fault for this fight with your sister, so I was merely offering to minimize the inconvenience to you, our guest, by my leaving instead, I responded. Sister-in-law declared, I'm an adult and you do not tell me whether to stay or leave. With that, sister-in-law grabbed her things and ventured off into the December night, a single woman with no plans in a city she is unfamiliar with, which is exactly what I feared and had tried to prevent. My wife is now mad at me for giving sister-in-law no option but to leave by saying she is welcome to stay. I'm baffled because it was intended to be anything but that. I could have handled the situation better overall, but the sisters are convinced that my saying sister-in-law is welcome to stay is the chief offense of all. A second, related question, after sister-in-law exited, I wondered out aloud to my wife, well, should I at least offer to book your sister a hotel room? But since sister-in-law had left to make the point that she is an independent woman, I did not pursue this option further, and now my wife is also angry. Comment 1. I'm going with NTA. It sounds like you and your wife have some issues you need to work through, but I don't really get how you leaving in order to not make your SIL, who or send may not have anywhere to go, uncomfortable makes you the asshole. What else were you supposed to do? Stay and make everyone suffer in a state of uncomfortable awkwardness. Comment 2. NTA. This is a perfect example of a person taking what a person says, twisting it to near the point of it snapping, and forming it into the exact opposite of what it means. Both your wife and your Scylla both are holes for taking a well-meant attempt to diffuse an uncomfortable situation and turning it into an even bigger issue. I found myself reading the end of this laughing my off at how ridiculous they're being. Comment 3. Your wife was mad/annoyed with you and read that text with that frame of mind. It probably came across as rude, whereas you had no intention of being rude. Texts do not convey tone. You thought you were being considerate. She thought you were being petty and controlling. NTA for the text. Expecting my date to cover the cleaning cost of a dress he ruined? I, 27F, am in a bit of a dilemma and could really use some advice. I've been seeing this guy for a couple months, and we decided to go to a nice high-end restaurant for a date. Initially I was going to wear a nice dark blue dress that I like to wear out, but he asked me to wear a different white dress that I had shown him once as it matched his outfit. I've never had a guy ask me this. The white dress in question was a gift from my late grandmother and was quite expensive, so I was reluctant but agreed and just asked that we didn't go anywhere after where I might spill something on it or otherwise mess it up. He mentioned clubbing after dinner, which is why I said that I didn't want to risk messing the dress up, and he said we could just go to dinner and I could change out of it before doing anything else. Great. However, the evening took a turn for the worse when he accidentally spilled his red wine all over my dress. He had gotten an unexpected call, and when he tried to quickly mute his ringer, his elbow hit his glass and it spilled all in the lap area of my dress before I could react. It was completely drenched and stained. He was apologetic at the time, and I tried to be cool about it, but inside, I was devastated, especially since I had mentioned specifically how I wanted to be careful wearing it. Later, I mentioned to him that the dress was very expensive and asked if he'd be willing to help with the cost of cleaning or replacing it. To get it professionally cleaned and the stain removed would cost $100, which I asked him to pay half of. To my surprise, he got quite defensive. He argued that it was an accident and that I was being unreasonable for expecting him to pay for something like that, and that it was my fault for wearing it out knowing that it could have happened. I feel like it's a matter of principle. Yes, it was an accident, but the dress is ruined, and it was extremely sentimental to me, not to mention a valuable dress. He thinks I'm being materialistic and making a big deal out of nothing. Now, I'm not sure how to feel about his reaction. Comment 1. There's a bright side to all of this. It usually costs people way more than $100, or worse, months or even years of their lives, before something like this reveals itself in a relationship. I don't even know how to vote on this, because the question of who pays the dry cleaning is so far besides the point. I couldn't even imagine it being worth $50 to have to talk to this guy again. You need to understand that this is how he's going to handle any conflict between the two of you, by taking zero accountability and then telling you that it's your fault for doing something he specifically requested of you when it goes wrong. If I were in your situation, I would happily pay $50 to never have to deal with him again. NTA. Comment 2. It sounds like it was a setup for a test. He asks you specifically to wear a white dress he knows is super expensive and important to you to dinner. Says he'll be so very careful but orders red wine, the #1 cause of ruined white dresses. Positions his cup and phone perfectly for the domino effect of wine in your lap. Then refuses to fix his mistake and calls you materialistic when he's supposedly the one who wanted to match clothing to this place. But you should have known better than to wear this, somehow. Yeah, no, that coupled with the fact that he was okay if you changed after dinner for the clubbing and no longer matched him but you had to for dinner. It's a test of control. How far can he push you before you snap back? Or will you willingly bend to be walked over? Dutch him, now. It only gets worse.